Welcome to the Millionaire Hairstylist, where our mission is to improve the financial well-being of hairstylists and creative professionals. Today's episode is part 3 in the 3-part series we've been doing on becoming a millionaire hairstylist. And I open every episode by saying that our mission is to improve the financial well-being, and the emphasis there is financial well-being. There's going to come a point in your career, if you're a creative, where you cannot stand behind the chair anymore, where you don't want to stand behind the chair anymore. And something we've learned in our community and something that Cash, our Celebrity Hairstylist founder, discovered is there are points when the earned income you are generating as a hairstylist is not enough to get you where you want to go financially. And that is what we'll address in today's episode. The 3 phases of wealth building that allow you to generate actual financial freedom as a creative. This is something that we've previously talked about only in our courses, and I am so excited to bring it to you here today on the podcast. Absolutely free. Here you are, the 3 phases of building wealth as a hairstylist. So Cash, this is part 3 in a 3-part series we've been doing, which is how to become a millionaire as a hairstylist. And this 3rd part it starts, I think, with a story that you've told me many times that I love every time you tell it. And that is, the first time, as a hairstylist, were starting to really understand money, and you started to set, let's call it, ambitious financial goals for yourself, far beyond the I want to make 6 figures as a hairstylist. You were starting to have 7-figure goals. And the story that you've told me is that you went to your CPA, who was one of the mentors that really informed a lot of your understanding of money, very important person in your life. And you said to him, all right, Coco and I are married. You're a young couple. Here's where we want to be financially. And he told you something at the time that really reshaped your perception of growing wealth as a hairstylist. Can you walk us through that conversation?
Yeah. So I had certain perceptions about wealth when I was coming up in the industry that later I learned were complete fallacy. And we'll talk about that, some of those fallacies possibly in this episode later. I went to a CPA to file my taxes. And he was like, because my agency had given me the references, and I walk into the office and I set this goal for myself that I want to have a certain amount of money by a certain amount of time. And I shared that with my CPA, and he was like, okay, so you want to have how much money by when? And he gets his calculator out, right? And he's like, okay, great. And he's like, basically, it's going to take you 1,000 years to get there and doing what you're doing.
1,000
years? I was like, you mean being 1,000 years? I was like, you mean being a hairstylist? He's like, no, just doing what you're doing with your money. and he's like, he basically shared that if I didn't change the way I was treating the money that I was earning, that I would never get anywhere near what I wanted to do. And I feel like that's the way a lot of people set financial goals. They just sort of set a number, I want to be here. And then they don't really understand how to do it, how it works. And so over time in my career, I kind of, through mentorship and reading and learning from incredibly successful, financially successful people, kind of learned a framework that had worked. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
So I think, Cash, almost everyone who's listening to this interview right now, if you're a working hairstylist, a working creative professional, they are earning their income. They are doing a work. This is how I make my money right now. I do a service as a producer for someone. I get paid for that service. And I think a lot of people feel like that is the step, that is the road that they will walk down to get to their wealth and their income goals. Is I'm just going to earn my way to financial freedom. I'll squirrel away some savings on the side as I go, and I'll sort of build up a little pile of coins in the corner, but I'm going to just earn through my own labor and through raising my rates, right? Raising my prices. And if I do that long enough, I do that consistently enough, when I get to the end of that journey, I will have something left over, and that will be how I have financial freedom. And that's where everyone is now. So tell us about that stage in the career. What is it like to be in that earned income stage? And what are the limitations of that stage in wealth building?
I mean, well, the limitation is in the title. It has to be earned. That's the major problem with earned income. There's a lot of problems with earned income. It's the highest taxed, right? So you lose the greatest percentage of it. Earned income requires your sweat. It requires your time. It requires your energy. It requires your basically all of your, often it requires money. You have to go buy clothes. You have to go pay for gas. You got to pay for your rent. And so it's like earned income is the most expensive, time consuming, slowest way to build wealth. However, it's the critical first part. You don't, every dollar you ever receive is going to come from someone. Someone has the money that you are going to need to earn, and that's how you start. Every dollar flows from somebody. And so when you go and earn it, you have to do something for that other person who has your money, right? Whether that's a client or a service, whether that's a boss at a job or whatever, a company you work for, you have to go earn that money. And the exchange is your life. So most people
Literally
don't want to be there forever because you're trading your life for money. So you have to figure out, well, gosh, I'm in this position where I do need money to live the lifestyle and be comfortable. So money's a critical component if you live in a developed society. If you're an off-gridder, this doesn't apply to you, but then you're probably listening on a laptop that you had to buy. So
I doubt there's any hairstylist off-gridders. So I think this is going to apply to most.
Yeah. So there's major problems with earned income. And this is where people get stuck. This is what we call phase one.
Right.
And so there's a rule here in phase one. So the first thing I wanted to do when I wanted to start building wealth was not focus on passive income, was not focus on buying, investing, or things like that, right? The first thing I wanted to do was make as much earned income as I possibly could.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. Because one, you're not going to be able to do that forever. It's very likely you're not going to be able to do that forever. It's very likely you're not going to want to do that forever. Not even close to forever. And then there's a point in your life at which you'll want options. And so you'll want to earn as much as you can in phase one because it is the easiest, fastest way to develop free cash flow. Free cash flow is the money that comes to you after everything is paid, right? It's free cash flow that now you have to do something with. So it's different from profit. Profits are in your business and in your revenues. Your revenue is profits what's left over after all of your expenses are paid and all that kind of stuff. So your free cash flow is the amount of dollars you have that you get to keep and work with. So now, what do you do next? Because this is where most people get stuck, phase one.
Well, and what most people think they're going to do is they're going to earn their income. And at a certain point, it's like, I'm going to take out a 401k. I'm going to take out an IRA. I'm going to talk to a financial planner. I'm going to build a retirement account and build a college accounts. And by the way, none of those things are invalid. And by the way, you should speak to a financial planner, a CPA, a lawyer when you're making decisions with your money. And this conversation is meant to be informational. It is not financial advice. But people sort of think, okay, I'm going to earn, raise my prices, which, as you're saying, is a super important step. And then I'm going to put money into these accounts in these places, a savings account, and that's my path. That's how I'm going to get where I want to go financially. And I think that's kind of what you thought when you had that first conversation. Some of those early conversations, maybe not the first, but your early conversation was a CPA, and you missed this critical second phase that we've discovered is really the missing piece for a lot of creatives, which is between the retirement account and the earned income is a crucial part of wealth building that most people miss. What is that?
Well, for the hairstylist, and for the creative entrepreneur, business owner, creative professional, there's a unique opportunity that you have. Like we said, we're not giving financial advice here, but the huge opportunity for most people that gets missed in phase two is growth assets. And what we call growth assets at the Millionaire Hairstylist, what I call growth assets, are things that you own or control that grow in value and put money in your pocket. That's the criteria. So there's three criteria there. It's something that you can own or control, which means you don't have to own it. You can control it, which means a corporation that you own might own it, or you might have controlling interest in it, or something like that, right? Own or control that grows in value and puts money in your pocket. So when you hear about someone who is worth $1 billion, right? Do you think they got $1 billion in paychecks?
Right. Their hourly rate is just so high.
So high. They really raised their prices, right? No, they didn't raise their prices. They didn't get $1 billion paychecks. They owned something that grew in value. And there are only really 4 primary things that you can buy that meet this criteria. And that's business. You can own or control a business. Businesses can grow in value. And They can put money in your pocket, right? The second one is real estate. Real estate, you can own or you can control it. Controlling example of real estate that you don't own might be Airbnb, a property that you rent out. So you rent the property and then you short-term rent it for more. You don't own it, but you control it and it makes you money and it can grow in value.
That's the one that Dave Ramsey got mad at you about.
An example, and it puts money in your pocket through maybe rental incomes, tax benefits, and things like that. The third one is commodities, right? Commodities can grow in value. And the fourth thing is paper assets. So I'm going to lump digital assets into that too, like cryptocurrencies and current. This is currencies, stocks, bonds, things like that. We won't go too deep into the myriad of paper assets available. So those 4 categories are the primary categories that are available to most people. And that really narrows your options for phase 2. So a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, phase 2, invest in growth assets. Where do I even start? And yes, you can overcomplicate it. And yes, it can be a never-ending, complicated hole that you go down. But it doesn't have to be. Now, investing in growth assets is the critical next step because we're not talking about increasing your income anymore. That's phase 1. How to maximize your earned income is different strategies than how to invest in growth assets and how to acquire them. You are going to be earning money while you're investing. And I'll break this down in a really easy way to understand it, these 3 phases. So the third phase after growth assets is passive income. Passive income is where you take your accumulated wealth, all that value that grew, that wasn't being taxed, by the way, because equity gains aren't often taxed. I want to be very careful with my words here because I'm not giving tax advice and I'm not a tax professional. But equity growth, so you own a business and the value of the business goes up, you're not taxed on that growth, right? You're not taxed until you have a liquid realization, until you realize a capital gain or money actually comes to you. And so if you have accumulated these growth assets and they've grown in value over time and they've been putting money into your pocket, at a certain point, as you get older, you might start to say, well, I want more passive income to replace my active income so that I can stop working and trading time for money. And this is financial freedom. The moment your passive income eclipses your cost of lifestyle. Not meets, but eclipses. It has to go beyond that. Yeah, so like when you break even, well, now you have to fight inflation and so on, right? So your passive income needs to go beyond what your current lifestyle costs are because your current lifestyle costs inflate each year. Let me reiterate the 3 phases.
Please.
1, you maximize earned income. That's where you start. You want to get to earning at least $10,000 a month. This is my personal benchmark, personal opinion. Other people might have certain things on this. But in this current economy with the current value of the dollar and what that buys, you do not need to be investing or doing anything other than maximizing your earned income until you're at least earning $10,000 a month. When you're earning $10,000 a month, you will then want to focus on getting as profitable in your business as possible so that your free cash flow goes up and you can allocate that cash flow to purchasing or investing into growth assets. And you want to do that over time and allocate consistently over time. And then when you are older or when it is time and when your assets have accumulated a value that you feel is, it's that you've reached the time in your life basically that you want to start earning passive income. You then allocate some of those assets, maybe through tax-deferred sale processes, so you don't have to realize all the money and then go invest and have this huge tax loss. So you allocate to passive income vehicles. Passive income vehicles can be rental real estate. It can be real estate syndications. It can be dividend stocks. It can be a lot of things without getting too complicated with it.
There's a lot of things you can put money to in high volumes
Yes.
in high volume that will return to you a very low percentage. But if you have a high enough volume, if you've accumulated enough wealth, that low percentage will cover your cost of living and then some. And again, I think this is why it's so important, Cash, that people, when they miss that middle step of growth assets, because they think what they're going to do is earn income and then put it into these sort of like low return passive investment vehicles that at the end of their career, there's going to be enough there to pay them what they need. The problem is that it's not going to pay them enough because they haven't earned enough, because their earning was capped by whatever they could do behind the chair, whatever they could sell an hour of their time for. So that middle step that you're talking about, growth assets, is so critical because that is where you can really accelerate the amount of return you're getting on your money and the amount of money that you're actually growing. And that I feel like is what people miss because they just want to earn, and then retire. And it's like, that is a very difficult path to go down, especially when, Cash, we've talked about this many times. You've had moments in your career where you wake up with your back is shot and you've had issues that have caused you to have to go to chiropractors. And it's like, and if your entire financial future is based on, can you stand behind that chair? What happens when you can't stand behind that chair? What happens when you have no ability to make that earned income? You're stuck because that was the only road you had to get where you wanted to go.
Yeah. And this can leave a lot of people procrastinating, saying, tomorrow I'll focus on building wealth. Or my spouse takes care of that. I don't need to learn anything about that. And Coco and I would strongly disagree. I think spouses absolutely need to be on the same page financially when it comes to building wealth. You need to have the same goals because household income is a power move when you get married. Marriage is a power move. It is a wealth building power move. That relationship is a critical one. Now you have an entity that could have multiple streams of income and a diversified stream of income. Even if you're a single income household, there might be the opportunity if something goes wrong with that single income that the other spouse could keep working. So there's absolutely upside just from a safety standpoint, socially from marriage, but also
Sure.
there are wealth building benefits that each of you can, one person can go be earning a ton and the other person can be looking and studying growth assets, right? Instead of having to do it all. Or two people can be earning and speeding up their ability to go invest. But both parties need to be involved in that vision and in that casting that vision and setting those goals when it's a couple. And my wife and I, we have frequent financial vision casting meetings. We check the health of our finances. We have an annual vision casting meeting, and finances are a huge part of that. We cast vision for our businesses. And so you might be asking like, oh my gosh, it's kind of overwhelming to think about with all I have on my plate with just growing my business. And if the phase you are in is trying to get to $10,000, then to be fair to you, it's studying growth assets or learning what to invest in is not the primary thing you should be studying at this time. You should be studying how to maximize your income and doing everything you can to get to that point. Once you're there, you will be able to buy enough time to go and look into these things more deeply. Now, it doesn't mean you can't. You could probably allocate some of your time each week to picking up a book on investing.
Or listening to this podcast.
Listening to this podcast. Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about how creatives, you will learn a ton here just from these conversations that we have about building wealth as hairstylists. We call it good thinking beyond the chair. Earning money's great, but you're going to get to a point, and every really successful hairstylist does, that starts earning $500,000 a year plus, and they go, I got to figure out what to do with this money. And when you're at the point where you go, I got to figure out what to do with my money, then you'll be able to buy the time. So let me reframe this one way that's really easy to think about these three phases.
Go for it.
Phase one, you are working for money. Phase two, you are working with money, meaning you're still working for money, but now you're working alongside it, putting it to work. You're working, it's working as you buy growth assets. Because right, you go to sleep and the value of your real estate or your passive, your income from your real estate grows. And so that's working and you're working. The final phase is getting money to work for you. And the big mistake people make is trying to jump from earning income to getting money to work for them. And I want to give you an analogy that clears this up and that makes it more understandable. When you are a seasoned hairstylist and it's time for you to hire a person and you want them to replace you, let's say. So you want to step out of your salon and you want this person to take your place. Are you you're working for money, you're just going to hire this person and you're just going to bring them in day one, bye, right? Take over and expect them to produce the same money you did? No. Everyone knows that would be an utter disaster, right? And this is what a lot of people try to do with passive income. They try to, I'm working for money, immediately jump to, I can get money to work for me. And that's a very different phase of life. But instead, what we do is you're working for money, you bring someone in, and you have them work alongside you, right? You're still working and you're working with them. Then the chances of getting them to become more valuable in your business is much higher because you're working with them. You're multiplying their skills. Their value is growing in your business. They start to earn more money in your business. Then you can start to gradually step away. And now you're receiving income from that person that began to replace you. So that's an analogy of how these three phases work.
I like that. Yeah. So let's dig in a little bit on growth assets, because again, because this is the component that maybe so many people miss, I think it's the one that we find ourselves talking the most about, and rightly so. You gave 4 examples, and the first 2 are the kind of where I want to focus today, because I would say in general, one of the things we don't get a lot into in our community on this podcast is we're not going to be picking stocks and telling you what stock to buy or what commodities have the most assets. It's just, those are topics you can learn a lot about in other places. And for some people, we've had conversations, Cash, maybe one of these days we'll talk about how to date investments and understand your personality type and the investment type. And there's some really good stuff that we've talked about in that vein. But I want to focus on those first 2, because you mentioned two types of growth assets. These are things you own or control that grow in value and produce revenue to you as they're doing that. And one of them was a business, and the other one is real estate. And I've watched you do and build your wealth as a hairstylist. You became a millionaire first as a hairstylist, by the way. You got to the $1 million of earned income as a hairstylist. And then you decided very wisely along that path, not immediately following, but while the time you were doing that, you decided, you know what? I need to invest in real estate and I need to start and run businesses. So let's just start with a business for a second. Why is a business and being a business owner, why is that a good growth and a potentially worthwhile growth asset to invest your time and resources into to grow with?
A business has a very unique opportunity. But like you said, every single asset has a personality, and it is just like dating. And there are going to be aspects of that personality that maybe you don't like much, or maybe you don't pair well with. So a business, I can give you some good personality traits of a business, and then we'll talk about some bad personality traits of the business. So a business can be really exciting because a business's value can skyrocket in a way that no other growth asset can. You can start a business with just sweat. Let's say $2,500. I've started a multi-million-dollar business with $2,500. You can do that, and you can put a valuation on a business that then becomes a billion-dollar company in a single lifetime. Now, what's interesting about that is that you don't do that with real estate. You don't buy a piece of real estate for $100,000 and 3 years later get a $1 billion valuation on it. That's, not really happening. That's not what real estate does. And so business has this unique opportunity to build wealth faster and in greater ways than any other asset, period. So businesses can be what's called home run plays. Now, you might understand with increased reward might come some increased risk. And there are a lot of people who try to build businesses, but the risk with that is that businesses can become worth nothing.
Yes.
They can go to zero
and cost a lot, you can put a lot of money into a business and lose both your money and exactly. Yes. So why is that? Why are businesses so? Because you made a good point. A business is one of the only things you can create that within your lifetime is worth $1 billion. I don't necessarily think anyone here needs to be making $1 billion, but the point you make is very valid. It's this asset that has that kind of capability. There have been billion-dollar brands in the beauty industry time and time over. That is a thing. So it's not like there's any sort of ceiling, by the way. Let's be clear about this particular category. There are salon chains that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's be clear. So again, it's there. But why are businesses, I think people often say that the failure rate of businesses is very high. And we have lots of people in our community who are growing their businesses, and it's a difficult thing to do. Why are businesses so hard to grow successfully? What is it about a business? It's very high reward, but like you said, it's super high risk. What is it about a business that's so difficult? And who are the kinds of people that should pursue that kind of difficulty? And who are the kinds of people that maybe should not pursue that kind of difficulty?
I think I'll name one of the most common reasons I think businesses fail is that they started with an unvalidated idea in the first place. Right. And so the research phase was completely skipped. The total addressable market was not addressed. The business idea wasn't validated. The market wasn't validated. The product wasn't validated. And so a lot of businesses get started up and LLCs are formed and things like that on a whim and on a wish. And that's not a great way to start a business. And that probably comes from a lack, high initiative, high startup. Businesses are very shiny objects. We over sexualize business. We think it's so sexy in this country, in the United States. And because all we hear about are the sexy business people who make tons of money and these businesses are awesome. And so it sets this vision for you that, business is really sexy, but you don't see the day-to-day grind. That's just not publicized. And so people start things where they underestimate the difficulty and they underestimate their ability and willingness to persevere through that difficulty. So number one, bad ideas. It's just not a good product market fit. It's not a good idea.
Right.
Number two is
this could be, the product you're inventing. It could also be, I really think that my geographical area is ready for X kind of salon or X kind of beauty industry, establishment. And you haven't really determined, is there a demand for that thing? Is there an oversaturation in that market? Can I charge a price point that would justify the rent that I need to pay in this particular Main Street area? So like, it just comes down to, did you make a plan that was winnable, that you could actually look at the numbers and say, yes, this is a business that can grow and thrive? And a lot of people struggle to do that correctly, or they don't do that at all. And then 4 years later, that was a $400,000 mistake.
Right. Yeah. We try to model decisions out like that. And I don't want to make it sound like you have to be a financial modeler to succeed in this way at all. You don't. That you don't have to be anything to succeed in business. There are no rules of what you have to be, because every time you say that, there's another example of a person who
100%.
broke through that. But we're talking about...
We've met many people on this podcast who are not numbers people that basically did some basic math and said, I think the business can run. But even they didn't violate this principle. Charlie's a great example.
Yes.
They looked at the numbers and said, I'm pretty sure that if I can do this number of services and pay this amount in rent, this business will work. And they were right.
Right. The basics, right?
The basics.
No one would ever advise that you just start a business on your whim and not knowing anything. But there are some stories with great luck that people have succeeded in total ignorance.
Yes.
But that's just really, you don't start a business and dedicate your life to something to cross your fingers and hope. You want to know what's going on. So that second reason of just the lack of perseverance. So you underestimate the difficulty at which it takes to run a business, the amount of hours you're going to need to put in, the amount of nights and weekends you're going to have to put in, the amount of dedication and problem solving skills that you'll need to develop and persistently face them day after day after day. Lots of uncomfortable situations. And people vastly underestimate that. And so they quit.
If you want to dig deeper into improving your relationship with money as a creative professional, go to millionairehairstylistpodcast.com, create a free student account, and you can access over 4 hours of free financial lessons on topics like calculating exactly what financial freedom would look like for you as a creative professional. Go to millionairehairstylistpodcast.com, create your free account today.
Those are just a couple of common reasons why businesses can be difficult.
Can I put forward one more that I think has come up in our conversations many times, Cash? Is I think a lot of people, some of the people that we have spent time with, one of the things we hear consistently is it's very, very difficult to succeed in business alone. Mm-hmm. It's extremely difficult because there are so many things, the solopreneur, now it doesn't mean it can't be done. And there are so many structures, particularly in the beauty industry, where you can have a booth, you can be a suite renter, and you can make it work. But when you're really talking about building something that can really grow in value and it involves hiring people and involves marketing and finances, we've consistently found that the best businesses operate in partnerships, because there are going to be things that you need to supplement in your own skill set or your own knowledge set, in your own personality set. And a lot of great business owners we've spoken to have a very strong partner who they're building that business with. And so that's always a question I think is worth asking, is like, if you're going to charge into the fray and build a business, are you going to do it by yourself and be all things to that business? Or who is the team? We talk about this in one of our courses, your $1 million team. It's like, who is that power circle of people that you're surrounding yourself with to really help you succeed? Because it is very difficult to do by yourself.
It is. I can't personally think of a situation of anyone who has built a big or meaningful business by themselves. I can't think of a single name ever. And I'm not sure if I hear of somebody, I'll let you guys know. But doing something alone this difficult makes it more difficult, and your likelihood to quit is extremely high when you do something alone, because to start out on the path of building a business by yourself requires a special degree of arrogance.
Mm.
It does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or just
And
let's call it ignorance. Maybe I think that sometimes you just don't know. You just don't realize.
Sure. And I like it could be a combination of both, but I say arrogance intentionally because arrogance is required. And you may be saying we may have different definitions of arrogance. So what I'm thinking of arrogant is like sort of an ignorance or an inflated view of your own capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you have to have that to be an entrepreneur.
You do have,
because if you had if you had a realistic view of yourself always, you would always judge what you could do off of what you can do right now. So there has to be a part of you that recognizes, I think I'm better than I actually am. Yeah. And that's what's causing me to go after what I've never done before, because I believe in myself. And so that's the definition of arrogance that I'm using isn't that douchebag that you see that's like, I'm amazing with no evidence, of anything, and I'm a liar, and all that.
It's not obliviousness. It's confidence. I mean, it's there's a line. The line between arrogance and confidence is blurry.
I think confidence even requires competence. True confidence comes from competence. And when you start a business, you don't know. You're not competent. And so you have to blindly and arrogantly go, I can do it. And there's a risk involved in that. And that can often backfire. And this is why entrepreneurs can be hard to work with sometimes, because it's like, God, it's like, no, this is the way it's got to be. This extreme level of conviction. They can be told by all the consultants in the world that you're gonna fail. And the real entrepreneur is going to go, I know in my gut that this is the right move. I'm doing it. And sometimes you're wrong. A lot of times you're wrong.
So let's talk about that for a second. So the second question I'd ask is, what are the kinds of people who succeed at business? And Cash, not only have you succeeded in the businesses that you've been in, but you've surrounded yourself and you were mentored by. Let's before we go on this episode, let's make sure we talk about the kinds of people you need to surround yourself with from a mentoring and coaching perspective, because I think that's one of the most tangible ways that people can really start building in the right direction when you talk about growth assets. But you've surrounded yourself with those kinds of people. You cut the hair of very successful entrepreneurs. This is one of the ways you started learning about this, is you watched the people who are sitting in your chair. And then we have talked to business owners on this podcast and in our community. And so what do you feel are some of the through lines of the people? And again, this is not a prescriptive. This is not like, if you're not this, you're not going to succeed. It's just that, and maybe this is like, hey, these are some of the things you want to model and be like. What are some of the attributes, do you think, of successful people when they start a business? Again, this growth asset, this very crucial component of building wealth towards a financial future that involves freedom. Who are some of the people, and what are some of the attributes that succeed in that?
So some of the commonalities you might find in really successful people are a high degree of persistence. You might find a high degree of clarity. These people typically know what they want. They know where they're going. They know who they are. They know their strengths and weaknesses, and they know what they want. They know they have a vision for what they want. These people are convicted. They walk around. A lot of these people are very convicted. Doesn't mean they don't go through seasons of confusion or loss or just time where they go, I don't know where I am or what I'm doing in all of this. It doesn't mean that there's never a need for pivot, but usually when they get started when they're crystal clear. Where do I go? How do I get there? What do I want? Who am I? Who do I need? Answering questions that develop clarity around where you're going. I think those are probably three really, really critical, or not critical, I would say really common. Those are three really common traits among people who succeed in business. Persistence,
clarity. What was the third one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Connections. So there's persistence, you want clarity, and you need to know people. Don't underestimate the value of luck. And you will need it. You will need it. And the way to generate that luck in your life is to be prepared for the opportunities that come to you. So, Oprah, whoever said that, success or whatever is
luck is when preparedness and opportunity meet.
Thank you very much. My repository of quotes here. Thank you, Jordan. So luck is when preparedness and opportunity meet. And so where do you think opportunities come from?
Right.
People.
Yes.
Every dollar you make came from an opportunity. Every opportunity you received came from another person. And every person was a chance meeting. So there's a massive amount of luck involved that people don't like to attribute success to any luck because we can't calculate it, we can't grab it, we can't quantify it, we can't repeat it. But every entrepreneur, if they're honest with themselves, must recognize that there is a degree of randomness and luck that came about. Now, you can increase your experiences of good luck and the opportunities that come your way by expanding your network. That's what we call your power circle. And the successful people out there surround themselves with very, very powerful, important people who are doing great things. So who you surround yourself with, who you meet, who you connect with, who you're connected with is really important. I recently listened to a podcast with Stephanie Masterson, and she's the founder of Drunk Elephant, a company that sold for $845 million in 6 years. It's a skincare company. She made her own luck in the beginning of her brand when she started formulating by guessing the emails of every beauty editor out there and meeting them and connecting with them by saying, is it a dot last name? What's the last name? What's the first name? Is it the first? And basically just blasting emails by guessing. Do you think people might say, oh, you got lucky. Yeah, there was some luck there. But did she set this up to be lucky?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so really successful people often embody this characteristic. They go get connected. They know
make connections. Yeah.
Who has my opportunity? Who is my next opportunity? Who has my money? Who am I going to need to make this happen? And so they start learning to ask the question, who, so they can build a powerful network.
Cash, I was speaking with a friend recently who really exemplified this in a way that I think is worth sharing. Quite often you'll hear someone say, I want to start a business. And they'll describe a business to you that they want to start. And often what happens, I think, when someone talks about starting a business is they'll tell you an idea that they have for a business. And it's usually something like, I want to build a bar that's a coffee shop during the day, which is actually kind of a validated business model, at least here in New York City. But it's usually what they are focused on is the idea. I've got this great idea for a business. And there's a lot to be said for that. As we said earlier, you have to have strong clarity and vision. And quite often the people who've succeeded in new types of businesses are people who are like, you know what, there's not this thing. I want there to be this thing. We spoke recently to Rianne Silva, the founder of Beautyblender, who realized as she was on set that there's room in the market. Someone needs to invent a better sponge. Basically, she solved this problem and it built a $100 million business.
That's a must listen to episode.
An incredible
Fantastic
conversation. If you are listening to this and you go, oh my gosh, yes, I need a growth asset in my life. And I really do think I want to start a business. And let's not forget real estate before this conversation is over. But if you think business, go listen to that interview because it's such a great case study for just success in business creation. But I was talking to a friend of mine who came to me and was talking about wanting to start a business. And here's how the conversation went, Cash. He said, I want to start a coffee shop. I thought, okay, well, that's a smart idea. Coffee shops do well. It's a high margin business. And I said, so tell me about what you want to do. And he said, well, there's a guy who's a friend of mine that I met at church who owns a successful chain of coffee shops. Fill in the blank of the name of the chain. It's not it's a regional chain. And he has showed me all of his books. He showed me his financials. He explained the model for how they pick the locations. He's explained what products they sell that have the highest margin. Turns out coffee shops make the most of their money, Cash. Actually, let me ask you this. What do you think is the number one revenue driver for coffee shops and what makes them fundamentally successful and drives their margin?
Oh, gosh. Let me think. What are the services and offerings of a typical coffee shop? I'm at a blank. I can't even guess.
It's the beans. Selling roasted, packaged beans. Because it's a retail item that has a high margin that you can ship to people who are not walking in the door. So you get someone to your coffee shop, they like the product and they want more of it, and you can ship them the product. And you can sell it in other marketplaces and you can sell it through grocery stores. So roasting beans is the golden sort of revenue driver of the coffee shop model. All that to say, my friend didn't come to me telling me he had this crazy idea and he's just going to go start a coffee shop. What he told me was, I have been surrounding myself with a mentor who is explaining to me how to win at this thing that I want to do. And what I said to him was, if anyone is going to succeed at doing what it is you want to do, and by the way, he was also explaining to me his vision for how he wanted the coffee shop to feel and the kind of market he wanted to go towards. And how he had all this clarity, but he was building this clarity. Where was he building it? In the connections that he was making with people who have succeeded. So if you're listening to this podcast now, you're already on the right track, because that's what we do here on this podcast, is talk to people who are like the coffee shop owner, who are willing to share what has led to their success. But I think that there's something so crucial, Cash. I watched you do this year after year after year. When we would meet up in New York City and you were starting to get into real estate, this will be our segue into real estate. You were not talking to me about how you just flipped the house. What you were talking to me about for like 1, 2, 3, I don't even remember how long of a period of time it was. It was the books you were reading, the education you were making, and it was the mentors that you had got. I just connected with this guy. And early on, Cash, I remember the relationships you were telling me. I got connected to this guy, and he's a big real estate investor in the Dallas market. And he's been looking at the deals that I'm bringing him and telling me if they're good or not. Like, the connections that you were making to inform the decisions you were making in building at that time, what was your real estate business, were so, remember the CFO who was helping you analyze the statements for your e-commerce company. So it's like your success comes so much from those voices speaking into you. And those relationships came from not only people who sat in your chair, we've talked about this many times, but just your willingness to educate yourself and then go find people who could speak that wisdom into your business journey. And it's like, if you can do that, that's like I said to my friend, I was like, most people fail at running a business. I think you're going to succeed, just because that is the way you're approaching this business problem solve that you're trying to do in formulating this coffee shop.
Couldn't agree more. I think if you're reaching out to the right people, research is the first phase. A lot of people get stuck in analysis paralysis and whatever, and you should be aware if you're getting stuck in the research phase, but research phase shouldn't be ignored. Too much crap is talked on analysis paralysis because they forget that analysis is important.
Yes.
It's the paralysis you don't want, but you still need to have a research phase. I have a business I've invested in as an investor. And, I'm working with the founder, and my first piece of advice is research, drown yourself in as much information and become as familiar with the success stories, who the winning players are in that category, how have they done it, learn all the lessons you don't need to learn twice, podcasts, books, listen, read, And that doesn't mean that's not time spent building your business, but it is it's necessary time to help you avoid getting started on a bad idea. It's going to help you validate your idea. It'll provide so much clarity in the next actions you need to take. And it is an incredibly powerful exercise in generating that clarity while connecting with other people. Because during that research phase, you're going to want to reach out to people and be like, hey, love to chat to you about something. Like you're going to want to, maybe it's a podcast that you start where you start interviewing really successful people because you want to start building
whatever
relationships
that vehicle is
people,
to open those doors. Yeah.
Right?
For you, it was the people sitting in your chair.
Yeah. For me, it was people sitting in my chair. So really, really powerful lessons that were learned for me around those characteristics of people who do well. But again, my warning to everybody is you absolutely need to recognize who you are, learn more about who you are, learn more about your strengths, learn more about your weaknesses, because when you do, you can start to piece that puzzle together of the other players you will need on your team, the other things you'll need help with, because you understand what doesn't energize you, what you're not good at, where your shortcomings are. And you're not going to try to succeed or do $1 billion task as a $30,000 performer in that category.
Yeah, it's so crucial. I mean, and I love that framework of just researching, building those relationships, understanding yourself. And then you said, you don't want to get stuck in the paralysis. You're going to have to take action. And I did see that with you. Like, it wasn't that you were having all those conversations before you spent $1. It was, you were having those conversations, then you did your first thing, and then you did your second thing. And it was along that way that I saw you bringing even more voices of counsel into your world. So let's shift over to real estate for a second before we close out this episode. And as a recap, what we're saying here, Cash, is that when you decided a long time ago that you wanted to achieve what you felt at the time was financial freedom, and you went to your CPA and basically said to him, hey, I'm going to earn my way hour by hour, client by client, chair by chair to financial freedom. He said, man, you're never going to get there in the amount of time that you have. You're going to die. You're going to expire. There's not enough hours in the day for you to get there. Your wealth is growing too slow. And what you learned about in those following conversations and in the education that you did with the people sitting in your chair was there is this crucial missing step to wealth building that creatives, really anyone who wants to build wealth, has to pursue. And that is the acquisition of and the nurturing of growth assets, working with money. And the true growth assets that we're focusing on is a business and or real estate. And it can be both. It can be or. Obviously, it depends on what
but
you're
there's
interested
a reason
in. So,
we're focusing on these two. There's a very
why
good
is that?
reason. Because
I would say it's also primarily your primary focus of expertise as well. But why?
It is, yes. But I'm very well versed in trading stocks.
That's true.
I'm very well educated in the stock market and in paper assets and investing in those. And I am invested in those things. So I would say that the most important reason that these two assets are so relevant to a hairstylist is because they are immediately accessible to a hairstylist without any extreme high barrier, right? So understanding how to appropriately value a company means you need to study fundamental and technical analysis, right? Then you need to develop your philosophy on valuing that stock and whether the company's shares are overvalued, undervalued, how and where you're
speaking about
them to go.
About doing an analysis on a company whose stock you might buy. You're saying that's a whole thing you would have to go learn to do very well. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, that is not a great fit for most people. Now, I think it's something like 95% of traders or personal stock pickers do worse than the total market average, and you measure by the S&P 500. And now you could say won't get into that. So
I know what you mean.
Real estate if you could go down that rabbit hole.
As you're saying, Cash, it's like if you're a hairstylist and you think that I'm going to go spend 20 hours a week learning how to pick the perfect stocks to build my wealth, the likelihood you'll succeed at that just with the amount of time you can put into it yes. and how difficult that already is very low. So like you're saying, like there's something specific about building a business, particularly a beauty business and or real estate that is sort of like already, exactly, you already have access to those opportunities. So tell me more about that.
So these two are the primary growth assets that creatives choose. And that's because, one, a business can be a very creative exercise. There's a lot of creativity needed to build a great business. And chances are, if you don't own your own business and you're not an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur. You're running your business inside of someone else's. If you're a hairstylist, you need to go get your clients. You need to manage your price. You need to make sure that you're covering your bills at home, right? So you already have some of the skills just by being a hairstylist. You've had to learn how to market yourself. You've had to learn how to price something. You've had to learn how to deliver a service effectively and gain customers. So now you've got a base of business understanding, whereas stock picking or investing in commodities or cryptocurrencies, there's a whole different type of education that's required. Second, and there are more reasons why business is great, but we'll move to real estate. Often businesses can be accompanied by real estate. And so even if you don't want to go buy a house as a rental, you can buy a building in your business. You can buy offices and rent them out. You can leverage real estate within a business in very powerful ways that offer very, very powerful tax advantages and income opportunities and appreciation opportunities. So, right, equity gain opportunities. You can also leverage a real estate as you can a business, where leveraging stocks is not something I recommend. And I don't
I'm sorry, when you say leverage, you mean taking out capital as against the value of that business, right? Or excuse me, of that real estate. Yeah,
and you can do that with most assets. You can borrow and invest in most assets, but in business you can get small business association loans, right? SBA loans. To start up your business, you can get support at very competitive interest rates. You can do friends and family fundraising and fund your business that way. You can bootstrap, and like I said, $2,500, you can start a business. It doesn't mean it's going to be the business you want today, but it's enough that you can get started with very little means. That's not the case for many other growth assets. And incorporating real estate into your existing business reduces the complexity of you needed to have so many eggs in different baskets. You're like, I got to learn this, I got to learn that. There's a barrier to doing it all. And so when you are earning money, you can then build your business. Once you're building your business, you can then start taking other opportunities like bringing real estate into your business and leveraging the benefits of real estate in your business. That's why I think real estate and business are such powerful growth assets for hairstylists to focus on.
There's two great episodes that I would recommend people listen to learn more about that. NeCole Cumberlander, who was on our premiere of our sort of relaunch podcast here, she and her husband bought the building, and they talk a lot about that in that episode. And also Sam Brocato, who is an absolute legend in the industry. He started many, many years ago buying real estate in Louisiana, and then now owns his own salon and the real estate that it sits on in New York City. And those are principles that these stylists have used very effectively. And I want to point out, by the way, Cash, as we close things out for this conversation, one really important caveat, which is that we keep talking about owning a salon as a business, but there are more than just the salon model for hairstylists as a business. So some people build coaching businesses very effectively. I've had multiple people on this podcast who generate regular revenue teaching. Now, again, there's sort of a blurred line there between the income that you earn standing up in front of people and having to teach. That's a little more that earned income category because you have to work in order to generate that income. But when you start to build a library of content that people then purchase when you're not actively teaching, now you're talking about an asset that is generating value while you are not standing behind the chair or standing in front of the camera. We've talked about an Instagram account that you might build. If you treat your Instagram account like a business, there are a lot of stylists who've been on this podcast who are making revenue from brands. Why? Because their Instagram account has reach. Their YouTube account has reach. Yes, they put time into it, but their YouTube account, if they're putting tutorials on YouTube, we've seen some people do this very successfully. You've done this successfully. Your YouTube account is generating revenue for you while hair tutorial videos that you have online are being watched by people while you're sleeping. So there's a principle there. There's the concept. Again, it's easy to get stuck in the particulars, but the principle is when you're talking about starting a business, again, whether that's an education business or whether that's an Instagram account or whether it's a YouTube account or it's a product line that you want to sell or it's, whatever these things might be, is it something that I can own or control that grows in value and generates revenue for me? And is it something that can generate revenue for me over time? It takes time to get to this relationship with your business where I don't have to constantly be there to make it run. That is really the model you want to think about. And if you can build something like that and you have cash, you have a business that buys and sells real estate, and within that business are many, many properties that you own that generate to you a return in rental income. So there's elements of that business where, you put the time in every day, but then if you step away, if you get hit by a truck tomorrow, there are checks that are coming in consistently. And so having that mindset, I think that's what I want people to walk away from. It's the headline here is not, oh my gosh, I need to go start a business or I'm going to be poor. It's, are you thinking in terms of, I'm going to earn one cut, one blowout, one balayage at a time for the next 40 years? Or are you thinking in terms of, how can I increase my earned income to increase my cash flow, to then seed money that I can then put into a growth asset, whether that's the building I'm sitting on top of, or that's a business I want to put money into, or that's a coaching program that I want to create, whatever that growth asset is. Because if I do that, that is a way to take my money and grow it at a much, much faster rate so that eventually down the line, I can, as we said, that third stage, allocate to passive income. And if you have that mindset and that's how you're approaching your career and your work, you have an opportunity, as you did, Cash, those many years ago when you spoke to your CPA, to build a plan that actually says, yes, I can have financial freedom in the future. I can step away from these things. I can spend more time with my family. I can go sailing, as you have already done. And know that I'll be taken care of, and know that I'm not, that I'm financially safe and protected.
It's an incredible feeling what you can do when you have security around your supply of resources. You will go take more risks. You'll go and build bigger things. You'll have more options. You typically do.
Opportunity.
There are rewards beyond just being rich to be rich. And if that's what you want, that's nothing wrong with that. But for me, building wealth was not an option. I met my wife and she lived in Texas and I was in New York, and she had 4 kids from a previous marriage. So she couldn't move. And I had a career that was specifically only able to grow in New York and LA. And so I was just beginning my career. I wasn't doing well. I wasn't making any real significant money. And I thought, I want to be with this person so bad. This is what I want. And it gave me an insane amount of dedication and clarity over what I wanted. I never wanted to feel trapped like this again. I never wanted to feel stuck like this again with no options. And so we decided, you know what, either we're not going to get married and we need to just kind of call it. Because we can't see each other, can't afford to see each other. She was cleaning houses. and I was doing hair and just starting my career, maybe working a few times a month. And we thought, you know what? I knew, I was convicted she was the right choice. Turns out I was right. My marriage
Boy,
is
were you.
one of the most rewarding things. It is the most rewarding part of my life. And when we committed, said we're going to get married, and we don't know when we're going to be able to see each other or be together, but we're going to figure it out. So this is do it or die. And for 7 years, we were long distance. But for 7 years, we committed to learning how to build wealth and achieve financial freedom. And we did it as hairstylist and a housekeeper. And today, we get to work in this. She's in the office right behind me. We work together 24/7. We're together all the time now. I don't fly anywhere without her typically. If I do, then it's a very short trip. We worked hard to be together. And so having a reason for why you're doing this, why does this matter, is one of the most important things that you should be considering when you're thinking about growth assets and building wealth. It's like, yeah, building wealth, cool, great. It's options, it's freedom, but why is it important to you? It might be a different reason. It's probably a different reason than me. It's going to be a different reason for someone else, but you need to have that reason.
If you're a hairstylist, if you're a creative professional, and you are interested in your financial well-being, remember to like and subscribe so that more episodes just like this one show up in your YouTube feed.